Spring is one of the best times of the year for woodworkers, so you don't want to miss out on this opportunity. Planters are a great Mother's Day gift, whether you want to give them away or are looking to sell them. Today's design is a matching planter to the smaller one I showed last week. That video will be linked at the end of this one if you'd like to check it out. The season for planters, though, is going to be over in the next 3 to 4 weeks, so make sure you're getting in on building these ASAP. I've had a lot of success in the last 8 to 10 days, so we're really getting into that season at this point. In this video, we're going to build a 46-inch planter. Cedar pickets are preferred because they're not treated. This will allow them to be food safe so they can be used for food or flowers. The final dimensions of this planter will be about 46 inches long, by 18 inches wide and about 25 inches tall. The height is very easily adjustable though, so we can cut the 25 inches down to much lower if you'd like. Additionally, the inside planting dimensions are going to be about 45 inches by 17.5 inches and then about 9 inches deep. I'll explain everything you need to know in this video, but if you prefer to have plans in hand, I'll have a link in the description to my Etsy shop where you can find them. If you'd like a free sample of what my plans look like, look in the description below for a link to where you can sign up for my newsletter and I'll send you some free plans in return. This build, like the small planter, will have no sanding required. We'll start by cutting all the boards down to length. At the miter saw, cut a 45-inch section out of 4 of the pickets. These will be our long sides. Try to choose the straightest boards you have. Set these 45-inch sections aside. The remainder of those boards will become the planter legs, but we'll come back to that later. Next, we'll take the boards for the bottom slats and the short sides. These will be 17.5 inches long and we'll need 12 total. Take 3 full pickets and cut them at 17.5-inch lengths. You should be able to squeeze out 4 boards from each picket. Next, we'll move to the table saw. We'll be ripping 3 different widths of boards for this build. Start with the saw set at 1 3/4 inches for the legs. Find the 4 offcuts from the 45-inch pieces from earlier. These should be about 26 inches long. From each of the 4 boards, rip 2 1 3/4 inch strips from each one. This will get you to 8 leg pieces. Set the remainder of these boards aside as scrap. Don't get rid of any of your scrap though at this point. We're going to be using that for pieces that you can't see in this build. Move back to the miter saw and cut the 1 3/4 inch strips to the desired final height of the planter. I made these at 25 inches tall, if you'd like to follow what I'm doing, but feel free to go shorter, down to a minimum of about 12 inches. Now take your last picket to the table saw. Set it at 1.5 inch width for the trim. Rip 2 strips out of this picket and set aside for later. Finally, set the table saw to 1 1/4 inch. Use the scraps from earlier and the remainder of the trim board to cut bottom panel supports. You'll need these bottom panel supports for the entire inside perimeter of the panels. These don't have to be in continuous lengths though, because they aren't visible in the final build. Now let's move on to assembly. We'll start by putting together the long side panels. Take the 8 legs we made earlier and glue and nail them into this configuration. I'm using Titebond 3 for everything since these will be outdoors. 1-inch brad nails are used for almost everything in this build, but I'll call out a few places where I've used longer ones. Make sure the ends of the boards are flush when putting them together. This will leave you with 4 identical corner pieces. You can see one side of this corner has more surface area than the other. Put that larger face flat against the floor and spread 2 of them out by about 4 feet. Add glue to these faces and spread evenly. Now take your 45-inch long side panels and set them into place. The top board needs to be flush with the top of the legs. Nail that into place. Then take the second 45-inch board and press it as tightly up against the top board as possible. Glue and nail that into place as well. We're using both glue and brad nails for this build. The glue will give it the long-term strength and hold we're looking for. The nails are giving it compression to hold it together while that glue dries. Repeat this process with the other 2 corners and long side panels. So after that phase, we'll have our 2 long panels and we need to connect them. We'll use the short sideboards for this. This is probably the toughest part of the build because the panels don't really stand up on their own yet, so try to lean it against something or clamp it down to give yourself an extra set of hands. Take 2 of the short boards and attach to one of the long panels with glue and nails. Again, do the top board first and ensure it is flush with the tops of the corners. The second board again will be pressed up against that. Mirror this process on the other side with 2 more short boards. And now we have the frame of the planter built. Next we'll use those 1 1/4 inch scraps we cut down earlier. Take these pieces and create the bottom panel supports as shown here. These will line the inside frame all the way around the planter. Glue and nail them into place. The edge of the support should be flush with the edge of the bottom of the panel. This will make the supports the same height all the way around the planter. The next part's easy. Put a bead of glue all the way around the top edge of the panel supports. Place the panels inside the planter next to each other. Try to leave a very small gap between panels, around a 1/16 of an inch, to allow drainage. Arrange all of your panels and trim any down if necessary for spacing. Once you're happy with where they are, nail into place with 1.5 inch brad nails. Now let's add the trim. I start with the long sides. Take the 1.5 inch wide board we cut earlier on the table saw and miter one end. Take this over to the planter and align one edge with the inside edge of the planter. Put in place on the planter as shown here. The mitered edge should meet right in the corner of the panels as shown. Hold this in place, go to the other end of your trim, and mark where the miter needs to be to align with this side. Go back to the miter saw and cut just a little bit beyond that line. It might take a few attempts, but sneak up on just the perfect cut. Once you're satisfied, glue and nail this into place. Repeat this for the other side. With the remaining trim pieces, cut a 45-degree miter on one end, measure and cut to the perfect fit to match the long sides. Glue and nail this all into place. The last step is going to be to add some panel supports to keep the long sides locked into place. This can be done with any of the scraps you have left. I like to cut a 45-degree miter for the end that's pointing up. Measure this and cut to a length where it comes perfectly up flush with the bottom edge of the trim. You can go with one in the middle, but I like to put two on each panel. So if you go with two, they should be spaced at about 16 inches from each edge of the short sides. Secure in place with glue and 1-inch brad nails. At this point, you could sell the planter as is. I've been listing these at $120 each, but I do have one upgrade available. If the customer wants, I'll add this weed barrier that I bought from Amazon to the bottom and a little bit up the sides of the planter. This still allows water to pass through, but will help keep the soil in place. Make sure to use scissors for clean cuts. I tried using a utility knife and it didn't really work out. Cut it a little longer than you think you need, then fold it over to get a clean edge. I just run this 3 to 4 inches up the sides. Attach in place with a staple gun and 1/2-inch staples. If you have a laser, you can also spend a little extra time making these plant labels for your customer. If you can figure out what they're planting, this will help drive future business with that person. I made these for an herb garden and just included them free of charge. They're just made from scraps and are 3/8 inch thick, 10 inches long, and 5/8 inches wide. So that's my large planter design to match the smaller version. I've already sold 2 of these this week and I just started making them. They took about 2 hours each and I'm making about $90 off of them. So the hourly rate is pretty healthy. If you are going to try to sell them, I do recommend a couple of things. First, use the Mother's Day season to help drive sales. I've added this to multiple of my listings that I have out right now. And I've had several customers say that they saw that and it helped drive them to buy these. And secondly, try to market these as vegetable or herb garden planters. This helps in a couple ways. One, it lets them know the material you use is food safe and that they can eat what grows out of it. And two, it helps give them a vision of what this planter can do for them. I especially think the herb garden route is a good way to go. Everyone likes the idea of growing their own food, but even in the larger planter, you can't really get a substantial amount of food out of it. What's nice about herbs is that they can go a lot further on a lot more meals. Since you only use a little bit each time you're cooking, you can pick through these all season and they're not going to run out. I think it takes the time and care they put into the plants and makes it go a lot further and feel a lot more worth it. So I hope you found this video helpful. Plans and everything I use for this build are linked in the description if you'd like to check that out. In the plans for this build, I made sure to include a couple of the staged pictures so you can use those for your listings. You could even use these pictures to test your market and see if they're going to end up selling. That can help you determine if this is even worth your time before you commit a bunch of time and resources to building one. If you'd like to see how I made the smaller version of these, follow the video here linked on screen. That'll also get you to the free plans for that build and get you a sample of what my plans look like. Get out to the shop and build something this week. Catch you in the next one.